Well, thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start with the top stories of the day.
I pledge that I will serve you with integrity and humility, and I will work day in, day out to deliver for the British people.
Now, Rishi Sunak vows stability and unity against economic crisis after winning the battle for leadership of Britain's Conservative Party and will become the country's first Prime Minister of colour. And stocks and the pound sterling climbs up as the markets react favourably to the news of the former finance minister Rishi Sunak being elected as the leader of the Tory party and by virtue of that, Britain's next Prime Minister. And Russia claims that Ukraine is in the final stages of developing what is being described as a dirty bomb to use against Moscow's forces. But Kiev says that these allegations are absurd. And as winter approaches, the World Health Organization stresses the importance of staying vigilant as cases of COVID and influenza rise in Europe, encouraging more people to get vaccinated. And a top Pakistani news anchor was shot dead in Kenya just months after he fled his home country to avoid arrest on charges of sedition. And the Indian Prime Minister celebrates Diwali, the festival of lights, with the Indian Army soldiers at Kargil. So Rishi Sunak has scripted history and he's all set to become the next Prime Minister of Britain. And at the age of 42, Rishi Sunak will be the youngest British Prime Minister in its modern history. Now, Rishi Sunak also addressed his fellow Tory members of Parliament at the Conservative headquarters in London. And he, remember, is the first person of British Indian origin who will be heading the government at 10 Downing Street. Now, his contender Penny Mordaunt dropped out of the Tory leadership race just minutes before the deadline was to be announced. She did not get the support of 100 members of Parliament, which was needed to be in the running. Therefore, 1922 committee chairman Graham Brady confirmed that Rishi Sunak is now the leader of the Tory party and by virtue of that, the next Prime Minister of Britain.
She has led with dignity and grace through a time of great change. I'd like to pay tribute to Liz Truss for her dedicated public service to the country. She has led with dignity and grace through a time of great change and under exceptionally difficult circumstances, both at home and abroad. I am humbled and honoured to have the support of my parliamentary colleagues and to be elected as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. It is the greatest privilege of my life to be able to serve the party I love and give back to the country I owe so much to. The United Kingdom is a great country, but there is no doubt we face a profound economic challenge. We now need stability and unity, and I will make it my utmost priority to bring our party and our country together, because that is the only way we will overcome the challenges we face and build a better, more prosperous future for our children and our grandchildren. I pledge that I will serve you with integrity and humility, and I will work day in, day out to deliver for the British people.
And while backing out of the contest, Penny Mordaunt said that she's in fact very proud of the campaign that she ran, and she's called this decision historic, adding that Rishi Sunak has got her full support. Now, according to reports, it is expected that Rishi Sunak will formally become the Prime Minister by as early as tomorrow. The ex-Chancellor gained the support of well over half the Tory members of Parliament, with Mordaunt struggling to reach the 100 Member of Parliament threshold. Rishi Sunak will become Britain's first person of British Indian origin. And also our correspondent Alex Isaac has been tracking the story very closely for us and has sent us this report. Listen in.
We understand that he is due to Buckingham Palace later today, and then we will see the resignation of Liz Truss. So she will have to put her resignation to King Charles III, and then he will announce Rishi Sunak officially as the new Prime Minister of the UK. So that's what we're expecting, but we don't expect that today. At the moment, obviously, Rishi Sunak has spoken to his MPs, and then he had gone to the Conservative HQ as well to discuss what he wants to change and what he wants to focus on going forward. And what we understand is that he doesn't want to be calling a general election before the next one is up, and he wants unity. So he has been asking his MPs to stand by him and to move forward, and he's going to be trying to put some policies in place that will at least try and unite some of the parties. Yes, it was held in private, but we do understand that there was a lot of cheering and banging on desks as he entered the room and while he was having his speech as well. So from listening, it's clear that these people are backing him, the MPs are ready to back him. What we understand, what was said, was again regarding the unity. It's about putting the country forward, and that's what he was making sure that everyone was speaking about, and that he wanted to put that person forward. He is that person to unify the party itself, and he did ask everyone to stand by him and as they move forward. And as I said, he did say again that there won't be a general election, so that's put some people's minds at rest as well. So it's all about now moving forward, and he did say that he wants everyone to move forward together.
And I also, a little while back, spoke with senior British journalist Nicholas Nugent, and this is what he had to say about Rishi Sunak now emerging as the leader of the Tory party and by virtue of that becoming the next Prime Minister of Britain.
Absolutely, yes. And you talk about the markets recovering. I think the other market we have to keep our eye on is opinion polls in the country, because unusually he's become Prime Minister without a general election, the second new leader to take over, at a time of very considerable disarray within the Conservative Party and indeed within the country. And I think the message I'm getting from the overwhelming vote that he got from fellow Conservative members of Parliament is, we got this one wrong last time, now let's put in place somebody that we trust to a greater degree. And of course, Rishi Sunak has been the Minister of Finance or Chancellor of the Exchequer for nearly 3 years. So he has a very good track record, especially bringing the country through the pandemic by introducing tax incentives to restore the economy. So that's really a big thing that he has going for him, which of course Liz Truss's administration didn't. So not only the Conservative Party, but I think the country at large have a high degree of confidence in him in restoring the stability to our politics, but most of all, stability to the economy and the markets. So he comes with a lot of goodwill behind him. And although there is clamouring for a general election by the opposition parties, if we have to, I think their attitude is, if we have to continue to be led by a Conservative leader, we've now got the right one. That's how I'm interpreting the message given by the votes today. My personal opinion is that he won't have any trouble lasting till that time, because the country don't want a new change of leader. I think the more pertinent question is whether he can lead the Conservatives back to victory in 2 years' time, assuming the election takes place when we expect. And there, I think there's a very big question mark, because the gap between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party on the opinion polls has widened enormously during the past 5 weeks or so. That's to say, if we had an election tomorrow, the Labour Party would romp home and form a government, and most Conservative members of Parliament would lose their seats. In other words, they would be absolutely trounced at the election. But I would also propose the notion that if anybody has a chance of restoring Conservative fortunes before that election, it's Rishi Sunak, because the fall came during, well, firstly during Boris Johnson's tenure and then during Liz Truss's tenure. Now we have a new man, and provided he plays his cards very well, especially as regards the economy, I think he's going to close that gap very considerably, and he will take the Conservative Party into the next election. Whether the party will win that election is much more questionable, but I think he won't have any problem staying in office for 2 years. Yes, and I'm going to give credit here to Boris Johnson, and many people don't have much good to say about Boris Johnson at the moment, but he did bring a lot of non-British origin people into his cabinet. It was the most diverse cabinet we've ever seen, and of course Rishi Sunak was one of those. So Boris Johnson paved the way for us to get over whatever lingering questions we might have about appointing somebody of non-British origin. Having said that, Rishi Sunak is more British than I am in a way. He was born and bred in Britain, and he spent his whole life in Britain. So he's absolutely British despite that Indian origin. And there's been a lot of discussion today about this being the first non-white Prime Minister to take office, and indeed it is. But we have, as has been pointed out, it's not the first non-Christian to take office, because we have had a Jewish leader in Benjamin Disraeli, but that was a long, long time ago. So I hope this means we're entering the modern era in which skin colour doesn't count, but intelligence does, because in my personal opinion, that's why Rishi Sunak won. He showed he was so much more intelligent and had a much greater command of the things that matter, notably management of the economy, than any of the other contenders. And that's why I think he's there. And I wish him well. And of course, it's a very nice touch that he is elected to that position on Diwali. So Indians can celebrate as well.
So that was Nick Nugent there, giving us the perspective in terms of what it means for Rishi Sunak to now, of course, be elected as the next Prime Minister of Britain. Remember, he's, of course, been chosen by the members of Parliament. It's not the general mandate of the British people, but he's been chosen as the leader by the members of the Parliament of the Tory party, and by virtue of that, he is now going to be the next Prime Minister of Britain. And this, of course, could happen by as early as tomorrow. Let's now shift our attention to some other stories now, where China's economy has rebounded at a faster than anticipated rate in the third quarter. But a more robust revival in the longer term will be challenged by persistent COVID-19 curbs, a prolonged property slump, and also global recession risks. Take a look.
China's economic growth beat forecasts in the third quarter, official data showed on Monday. The National Bureau of Statistics reported a 3.9% rise in gross domestic product in the July to September quarter year-on-year. That's above the 3.4% pace forecast in a Reuters poll of analysts. It also marks a quickening from the second quarter's growth rate of just 0.4%. The data was originally scheduled for release last Tuesday, but was delayed amid a key Communist Party Congress last week. Despite the rebound, challenges loom. China's zero-COVID strategy and strife in its key property sector are worsening the external pressures from the Ukraine crisis and a global slowdown. A Reuters poll forecast China's growth to slow to 3.2% in 2022, far below the official target of around 5.5%. That would mark one of the worst performances in almost half a century. Though policymakers have played down the importance of hitting the growth target set in March, authorities have rolled out some 50 economic support measures since late May. New bank lending in China nearly doubled in September from the previous month and far exceeded expectations thanks to central bank efforts to revive the economy. Separate data showed industrial output in September rose 6.3% from a year earlier, topping August gains and beating estimates. But retail sales saw a weak 2.5% rise. That's less than the forecast 3.3% and slower compared to the 5.4% growth in August.
Meanwhile, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was recently accused of corruption by former President Jacob Zuma, has addressed the nation. And during his address, Ramaphosa has vowed to implement the recommendations made by an investigative panel, which is leading a probe into the government's corruption. Ramaphosa has pledged to crack down on corruption and has called for a national-level effort. He's also said that the findings of the probe have exposed the central role played by the private sector in the mismanagement of state funds during Zuma's tenure. Now, the president also spoke about a new General Intelligence Amendment Bill to review the ethical standards of state tenders, and it could also ban ministers and board members from being involved in procurement within state-owned enterprises and government departments.
Those who are involved in corruption or who are even thinking about engaging in criminal conduct must know that all the instruments of the state will be used to bring them to book. There will be no place for corrupt people, for criminal networks, for perpetrators of state capture to hide.
And former President Jacob Zuma on Saturday accused Ramaphosa of treason. He's also accused Ramaphosa of concealing multi-million-dollar cash heist at his luxury farmhouse, and has said that no president should conduct private business while in office.
Your president is corrupt, yet the busybodies and self-appointed anti-corruption crusaders and NGOs are dead silent.
Zuma's comments have come just 2 months before the African National Congress conference, where the president is expected to seek a re-election as the party head. And our correspondent Calden Ongmo has been tracking the story pretty closely for us and has sent us this report from Johannesburg. Listen in.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says through the implementation of the state capture report, South Africa is in a new chapter to fight corruption. He has announced so far over 160 people have been implicated and have already appeared in court. Around 1,044 entities were likely involved in state capture. Ramaphosa confirmed that a total of 2.9 billion rand stolen money had already been recovered so far, and South African Revenue Services had already collected more than 4 billion rand in unpaid tax. Ramaphosa also made a major announcement that the investigating directorate will now be a permanent arm of the National Prosecuting Authority. Going forward from here, the recommendations that is submitted to the Parliament will be deliberated, and suggestions by members of Parliament and from across society will be welcomed. This is Calden Ongmo from Johannesburg, South Africa, for WION World is One.
Now, when you think of parkour, you'd probably think of acrobatic stunts on buildings and walls that are great to look at, but a French group is now doing parkour for environmental reasons. They're switching off illuminated hoardings at night after the shops shut, and our next report gets you their story. Meanwhile, India is celebrating the Festival of Lights, Diwali. Now, this festival is celebrated across the country, including by soldiers at our country's borders. Now, the Indian Prime Minister, of course, continued the tradition that he began when he took office in 2014 for the 9th year in a row. The Prime Minister decided to spend some time with the soldiers at India's border areas. And this year, he visited the town of Kargil in Kashmir.
आज कारगिल की इस विजय भूमि से आप सब जवानों के बीच से मैं सभी देशवासियों को और पूरे विश्व को दीपावली की हार्दिक बधाई देता हूं। पाकिस्तान के साथ एक भी लड़ाई ऐसी नहीं हुई है जहां कारगिल ने विजय ध्वज न फहराया हो।
And also at other points along India's border, the Indian Army exchanged sweets with Pakistani soldiers and also with Bangladeshi soldiers. The exchange of sweets, in fact, took place at the Wagah border with Pakistan and at the Fulbari border with Bangladesh. Now, this tradition of exchanging sweets is, of course, many years old. Sweets are exchanged on multiple festivals, including Diwali, on Eid, and also on the occasion of Independence Days. Well, that's all the time we have in this edition of the News Bulletin. Stay tuned to WION.